This presentation is basically designed to give you some advice on next steps you can take following your application to St George's for medicine in 2025. Most of you are probably here because unfortunately you weren't successful in applying to medicine at George's this year. As I'm sure you all know, medicine's an extremely competitive course, and the vast majority of applicants to us aren't successful on their first application. That doesn't mean that that's the end of your healthcare, science, or medical journey at George's. Hopefully, after today, you feel more confident and prepared to take whichever next step you decide in your academic journey and career. It's worth saying that today's a webinar, so although you can all see me, we can't see or hear you. While the last few people are joining, it'd be great before we start properly if people could just test out the functions of today's webinar, just to make sure that you can contribute fully and get any of your questions answered. So most people should be able to see at the top of the screen a little Q&A function. If everyone could now put a quick message in that Q&A function telling us one or two things you're hoping to gain out of today's session, that'll give us a really good steer for the rest of the session and also means that we know everything's working on our side. So if people have a chance to do that now, just whilst the last few people are joining, that would be great. Over the rest of the presentation, if at any point you think about something you want to ask a question, just put it in there. And then at the end of the session, we'll go over those in a little bit more detail. We'll come to these at the end with our student ambassadors as well. So whether they're about student life, whether they're about admissions or anything else, we can talk through those at the end of the session. So hopefully some of you have had a chance to submit some questions. If not, yeah, do that now, just whilst the last few people are joining, and then we'll get started in the presentation properly. Great. So we're going to start with a couple of brief introductions about who we've got on today's webinar. So my name's Jack. I'm the Student Recruitment Manager here at St George's School of Medical and Healthcare Sciences, and my job is basically to work with prospective students in schools and colleges to promote and support applications to our various courses, including medicine, but also biomedical sciences, clinical pharmacology, and our healthcare courses. I'm joined today by two ambassadors who's going to very briefly introduce themselves now. So Zara, do you want to go first?
Hi everyone, my name's Zara and I'm currently a final year medical student at St George's.
Perfect. And Dania, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Dania. I'm also a final year medical student at St George's.
Great. Thank you, Dania and Zara. And we're going to hear from Dania and Zara later on after the presentation is complete. But like I said, if you have any questions in the meantime, do put them in that Q&A and we'll get those answered at the end. Now, just to briefly run through today's session, we're going to start with a very brief introduction of St George's. Obviously, you all know what St George's is. You've applied to us already, but we just wanted to go over that in a little bit more detail and talk a little bit about some changes that are happening to George's over the next year or so. But we will keep this brief so that we can move on to the main thing that we want to talk about in today's session, which are the routes that you can all take either to get into medicine or another healthcare course. So throughout this, we're going to talk about a couple of subject spotlights that we have on offer at St George's, including paramedic science, biomedical sciences, and clinical pharmacology. But we'll also be giving you some top tips on making a competitive medicine application as a second applicant, as a reapplicant, including some UCAT tips, an update on some changes that are happening with the UCAT and personal statement, and also in a little bit more detail talking about graduate medicine route and how you can do medicine as a second degree at George's or at another provider. Finally, throughout today's session, we'll have some really key resources that will help guarantee your success into the future, whether that is studying medicine or undertaking an alternative healthcare or similar career. Any resources that we put on the screen will have a QR code, so you can scan that whilst I'm speaking, but also we'll send them all around afterwards in the sort of follow-up to this message. So if you miss anything, if I go too quickly, just know that we'll be sending all of the information around afterwards. We're also recording this session, so if you miss anything or just want to go over anything again, you'll get that recording, a link to it, after today is finished. So without further ado, let's just start by telling you a little bit about St George's. So St George's was founded over 250 years ago as one of London's first teaching hospitals, and since then we've trained and taught literally hundreds of thousands of medicine and healthcare professionals. And we became a fully fledged university teaching a bunch of different courses. Whenever I'm going out to schools or colleges, especially in South London, it feels like basically everyone was either taught, treated, or born at St George's. And so we have a really, really great campus that we can sort of support students with all that history behind us. We're a little bit different than we were 250 years ago. We've grown to do more than just teaching medics and surgeons, but we still share a site with St George's Hospital. You might have seen St George's Hospital on 24 hours in A&E. It's often the hospital they use in that. And we actually share a campus with that. So if you haven't had a chance to visit us, you'll be able to sort of see, if you do ever come to campus, that we're really, really integrated with the hospital. We've also recently merged with another university, City University, to form City St George's. This means that the wider university isn't just medicine and healthcare focused, but actually also includes lots of other courses in business and the professions. This means that if you do ever join us in the future, you'll join a bigger student body with more academic well-being and financial support and a lot more space to sort of study and learn. For most of you, if you do decide to join us, later this year or next year, this won't be a massive change for you. We're still going to be in South London and Tooting on the same campus, and we're still going to have that really high quality specialist teaching. The only thing that might make a little difference is from sort of March onwards, you won't see St George's branding as much, but instead this logo in the bottom right, the City St George's branding. So let's get on to sort of the bulk of today's session, talking about these alternative pathways that you can take into medicine and healthcare. So before we move on to other ways to get into medicine specifically, I think this is a really, really great opportunity for anybody on this call to have a think about why they really want to study medicine. Medicine's a really incredible degree course, and those that decide to take that path often find it a really rewarding, exciting, challenging career afterwards. But as you all know, medicine isn't without its difficulties. As well as being very competitive to enter, medicine also is a degree and a career that will push you, that will expect a high degree of time and commitment, and can be really, really difficult for people to sort of get on and then progress through. I would never want to discourage anyone from doing medicine who's really, really passionate about it, but it's important that anyone applying for MBBS at George's or other institutions really understands the realities of the degree and the profession and why they want to enter medicine rather than another related subject. So to that end, I'd really encourage you all to spend a good bit of time thinking in detail about why you want to study medicine and what it is about you that makes you passionate about the idea of becoming a doctor. This is helpful for two really important reasons. Firstly, it'll make you a stronger applicant. One of the biggest things that we look for in personal statements and interviews is people understanding the profession and being able to show why they would be really, really good at it. Secondly, you might find out that actually I'm more interested in something that's sort of linked, something in healthcare or something in sciences. So you'll all have your own reasons on why you sort of plan to study medicine, but some of the things you might have thought about is to help people, to save lives. It could be because you're really interested in biology and chemistry. It could be the want to have really practical, hands-on study and work. On the other hand, you might be really interested in the career prospects, on having basically a job guaranteed for life, on being able to take loads of different pathways after you graduate. You might have wanted to go into a specific area like oncology or cardiology, or just want a really diverse career dealing with challenging issues that you can become an expert in. So once you've had a good think about your reasons for studying medicine, then you can start to look a little bit beyond medicine to related healthcare and science subjects. Again, this for two reasons. It might be that you find something that actually you're really passionate about instead, or it might be that you just have a better understanding of why medicine's definitely for me, and that's the sort of career that I want to follow. So just some examples of some courses. I'm not saying that all these courses are the same as medicine, have the same challenges or anything like that. They all come with their own challenges, pressures, and skill set requirements. But every day I meet students who thought they wanted to become a doctor and instead have found really, really fulfilling careers and degrees in courses as diverse as like paramedic science, midwifery, stuff like that. So what I would say is if you're really interested in medicine, just to have a good idea of why you want to do that, and then have a little look at these other careers just to see whether they also satisfy exactly what you're looking for, or if not, you'll just have a stronger understanding of how sort of the NHS and healthcare works together. As I've mentioned already, and I'll mention again, the main thing that separates a successful applicant from an unsuccessful applicant for medicine is a really strong understanding of the specific role that a doctor plays in a healthcare system and how their personal strengths and interests make them well suited to that. So I put up just a selection of healthcare courses here. I'm not going to run through them all in loads of detail, but what I would say is you should all know what all of these mean. You should all have a bit of an idea of sort of where they might fit into a wider healthcare system. The ones in green are ones that we offer at George's, so paramedic, healthcare science, MPAS is physician associate studies. The ones in purple are offered at our city campus, which is in sort of central London, and the ones in yellow are offered at sort of other London universities. I do want to focus on one course a little bit, just to give you a bit of an idea of where I'm getting at and why we're talking about alternative courses. So paramedic science has been offered at George's for around a decade. In that time, we've had thousands of students come through and become really, really skilled paramedics afterwards. Of course, everybody knows that paramedics sort of save lives and help people every day, so it definitely ticks that box if that's what you're interested in studying medicine. However, a lot of those other things that people study medicine for, I actually think a course like paramedic also really, really supports. Firstly, paramedics are always in demand. It's also a job for life. Every region in the UK is in need of more paramedics. And if you get a paramedic degree in the UK, you can often get special visas to study abroad in Germany and New Zealand and Australia. Paramedics also have more diverse career paths than you might think. Many of our graduates do end up working in A&Es and ambulances, but a lot of them also go way beyond that in community environments, in schools and universities, and working on major events, sports events, and concerts, and actually in hospital teams as part of resuscitation and emergency teams. Paramedics also get to use that scientific knowledge just the same as medicine. They'll also use it in a different way. They'll also use like different parts of the knowledge, but you're still getting to combine that science with really practical on-hands teaching. This session isn't about convincing any of you to become a paramedic or to do anything else in particular. Instead, we just want to show you that there are alternatives and that even if you decide that you don't want to pursue a career in medicine, you can still find really challenging work in healthcare that will allow you to pursue your different passions. So just a couple of resources that we've got here. If you're interested in learning more about our healthcare courses or healthcare courses in general, I'd really recommend having a look at all of these. Again, these will be shown at the end of the presentation and sent in the follow-ups. Don't worry about scanning them all now. Firstly, I've put the NHS Careers website and quiz on here. The NHS is really, really good at promoting and educating prospective healthcare professionals about the different careers that you have on offer. They have a really great careers quiz that I recommend everyone I speak to who's sort of thinking about university to take. It takes you through a bunch of different questions on basically what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and then recommends different careers. Even if you're already committed to one specific path, even if you definitely want to do medicine to get onto a specific specialty, I'd still recommend taking the quiz because it will help you better understand the kinds of things that are required to make a great doctor, for example. They're also really good in providing resources on different careers. So if you're like, I want to find out a little bit more at operating department practice or occupational therapy, there's some really great resources on the NHS website. Secondly, I've put a link to the webinars that we've already run at St George's. We have exploring webinars that go through each of our subjects, including medicine, in a lot more detail, and you can find those all on our website. We also have some taster lectures in various subjects. These can be really good in just learning a little bit more about how what it's actually like to study a different course. They're also really good for talking about in personal statements and during interviews. Lastly, I've linked to the College of Paramedics careers page. Here you can see just how diverse a paramedic's career is. This is more of an example of a resource that you might use to find out more about different careers. Every profession Every healthcare profession will have a professional body attached to it. Normally, they're called colleges, and the vast majority of them will have some really great careers and education resources that you can have a look at in a bit more detail. Okay, so now that we've talked about some alternatives to medicine, we're going to focus on the rest of the session about alternative ways to actually get into medicine if you've decided you still want to continue down that path. You really want to become a doctor and study medicine. So one thing that a lot of you might be thinking about is taking a year out and reapplying in 2026 and 2027. When thinking about reapplying, the main thing you want to do is just basically take a step back, evaluate your application, and look at where you're maybe the weakest and spend some time working on that. Universities will consider lots of factors when evaluating a medicine application, but there's a couple here that I want to highlight in a little bit more detail, partly because they're things that you can really work on and improve over the next year if you decide to reapply in October 2025. These are probably obvious to all of you, but they're UCAT, interviews, and work experience. Most universities make clear what their GCSE and A-level requirements are, and many universities regularly offer people that have those minimum requirements. So if you do have the minimum A-level requirements for university, you don't necessarily need to be topping those up. However, it's the UCAT and the interview where you can really develop your application, where you can become more competitive as an applicant there. Medicine applicants are really difficult to evaluate and decide between. We get thousands of applications every year, and there's only so many interviews we can offer, so many places that we can offer. And so the UCAT especially is a really strong tool that universities are able to use to distinguish between applicants that both might have great A levels, a really strong personal statement, and a really strong reference. Practicing the UCAT and using resources made available by the UCAT consortium itself is a really good way to increase your score and therefore your likelihood of getting an interview in a place at medical school. There's loads of good resources online. We have some stuff on our website on practicing the UCAT, but also lots of medical schools will put lots of information on how you can do the best at the UCAT. The other two key areas that I think you can all think about sort of working on over the next year are really closely linked. It's work experience and interviews. Most universities don't require clinical work experience. We certainly don't, but having some sort of relevant experience or at least being able to reflect on the experiences you have and how they relate to medicine is a really important aspect in making a strong application to medical school. All universities will expect you to have some experiences that you can reflect on and that you can show will make you a strong candidate to study medicine. We'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in a second. But the last thing that I wanted to mention before we moved on from this slide is a little bit about that resits and reapplying. Some universities don't accept reapplications to medical school. So make sure, whichever universities you decide to apply to in the future, if you've applied already, that they are happy for people to apply a second time. Some universities also won't accept any applicants who were rejected after interview. Again, go on their website, get in touch with the teams, and you'll be able to find out if you are actually able to reapply, because you don't want to waste one of your 4 UCAS options reapplying to university that doesn't consider applicants second time. At George's, we do accept reapplications currently, but again, it's always worth getting in touch with us before you apply, just to make sure that hasn't changed. We've got no plans to change it at the moment, but again, for any other university in sort of August, September, make sure you contact their course inquiries team or their admissions team and just ask, do you accept applications a second time round? Will my application be considered, even though I applied previously? Similarly, if you need to reset your A levels or your level 3 equivalents, make sure that the universities accept resets. Not all universities allow you to reset your A levels and so might just automatically reject you. For us, we do accept resets, but there needs to be an extenuating circumstance. There needs to be a reason that you had to reset your A levels, and that needs to be told to us before you apply. Our extenuating circumstance deadline is usually in September, so it's before the UCAS deadline. So make sure, again, if you're reapplying to any universities or if you reset your A levels, you spend a good bit of time on the website, you phone up their inquiries line, you send them an email, just to make sure you're doing everything you can so your application will be considered in its fullest. So if you do sort of decide to take a gap year to reapply in October 2025 to start in September 2026, there's lots of things that you can do to make sure that gap year is really, really worth it and improves the likelihood of your success. Gap years really are an opportunity to expand your skill set, to have new, unique experiences, and help you understand why you actually want to pursue the career that you do. Some people might have the luxury to travel, to take unpaid work or volunteer, but we know that for lots of students that isn't an option, especially if you end up taking paid work or you have to reset exams. But even if you are sort of working or studying, you still can use your gap year to develop those transferable skills that medical schools look for that are really, really vital in success in your application. Also, regardless of what you do in your gap year, you want to spend a lot of time thinking about why you want to study medicine and what skills you have and what skills you lack that are important for this. One tip that I've heard from successful applicants in the past is that they spend a long time reading and thinking about what makes a good doctor, and then really, really honestly trying to reflect on themselves on like what of those skills they have and what they don't have, and then they do something about it. Whether that's undertaking volunteering to improve your communication or team working skills, it might be reading more about the realities of being a doctor in the UK and memoirs or watching documentaries. It might be working as a HCA or as a receptionist in a local GP surgery to better understand how sort of the day-to-day work of doctors is. All of these things have to be kind of personal to you. There's not a golden bullet of how to spend your gap here, but actually, again, try and think about what you might be lacking in your application and how to build that up is a really, really great way of spending that gap here. If you do decide to reapply in 2025 for September 2026 start, I want to talk about a few changes. Reapplication will be really, really similar for a lot of you. You'll still apply through UCAS. You'll have to set the UCAT again. You can't use your UCAT score for this year for most universities and certainly for us. Few things that will be changing. Firstly, the UCAT's changing. They're getting rid of the abstract reasoning section. For some of you, that will hopefully be really, really good news. For others, maybe you quite like that session. Regardless, it's not going to be included in the UCAT from now on. Do have a little look on the UCAT Consortium website that I'll put on the next slide for more details about how this works. But for most of you, it just means that when you're studying for the UCAT, you don't include that abstract reasoning section. They're not replacing it, so there's not going to be a new section coming in its place. Instead, it's just being taken out completely. And so hopefully it means that you can focus on the other sort of specific areas. Secondly, UCAS have updated their personal statement requirements. So instead of writing one long personal statement, your personal statement is going to be split into 3 different sections. In terms of the content, there aren't any changes. Universities are still looking for the same things. You can still use the same advice you would have got last year. You can still use the personal statement you got last year, maybe with just a few changes on what you do on your year off. So if you hear people say they're scrapping the personal statement or there's a new personal statement, that's not really true. Instead, just think of it as they've put a structure around the personal statement. And that's just to make it a little bit easier for you to submit a really strong personal statement and for universities like us to evaluate those applications and make sure we're understanding applicants as well as they can. Lastly, do make sure you're having a little look on the Medical Schools Council website. So the Medical Schools Council basically tells every university in the country what they ought to be looking for in medicine applicants. Every university uses the Medical Schools Council guidance and it's updated normally every year. So do have a little look on their website regularly. They also have lots of tips on like making a strong application, reapplying or applying as a second degree. It hasn't been updated yet for this year, but again, do check, especially over the summer, if there have been any changes. And lastly, all of this info is correct as of now. I made this presentation over the past week or 2, but make sure that you're checking before you're applying. Stuff does change in universities. Medical schools often have changes, whether they come from the government or elsewhere. And so always make sure you're checking all of this information before you submit that application if you decide to submit next year. So again, a couple of links to things that I just discussed. So the first one is the Medical Schools Council page. Second one is the UCAT Consortium page, and that goes through some of the changes we're making to the UCAT and also some practice that you can do on that website. And lastly, this is to the UCAS website about the new personal statement, so you can see how that's broken up in a little bit more detail. Again, we'll send these all around at the end. So we're about halfway through my bit of today's session, but we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this alternative route, and that's undertaking a different undergraduate course and then applying for medicine afterwards. So doing a first degree course and then taking medicine as a second degree. This is becoming a really popular option for lots of medical students. Lots of medical students, including the two ambassadors that we have on today, study a different course and then study medicine as a second degree. And the proportion of students doing this is increasing every year. After completing your first degree, you can then apply to undergraduate medicine on the basis of that degree, or at some institutions, you can apply for an accelerated course, sometimes called graduate medicine. We'll go through the differences between these in a second, but first it's worth saying that to study medicine after completing a degree, you don't necessarily need to study a science degree. At George's, we accept any UK honours as long as it's of a certain grade and many overseas qualifications in order to apply for undergraduate or graduate medicine. However, the vast majority of students who join us do so after completing a course that's kind of linked to medicine. So it might be something like biomedical sciences, it might be something like clinical pharmacology. This is for two reasons. One, when you join us, we still expect that you have a really high level of scientific knowledge, similar to someone who studied A-level biology and chemistry. And secondly, we just find that students who study science subjects perform better in the UCAT and the GAMSAT and in their interviews. That being said, we do have students that join us after studying like an English course. They then come and do medicine. It's just not the sort of typical route. So if you definitely want to get into medicine, but want to do another degree first, you want to think about these science subjects that might be quite closely linked. So just to talk through some of the differences between undergraduate medicine and graduate medicine and why someone might decide to apply for one or the other. So undergraduate medicine is what you've all already probably applied for. It's open to any students, or it's open to students studying level 3 qualifications. That's A levels, IB, and it's also open to graduates. So you can apply to undergraduate medicine with a degree. You'll probably know this, but you set the UCAT, it's 5 years long, and you have the option to intercalate, and it still allows you to sort of build up the theoretical knowledge and practical skills. Graduate medicine is a little bit different. It's only open to those that already have an undergraduate degree, so have already completed their BSc or similar. You set a different admissions test. It's called the GAMSAT. It comes from Australia. It's a little bit more science focused, and I've heard it is a little bit more challenging. And so it's worth thinking about whether you want to set that or you'd rather set the UCAT again. Graduate medicine is a little bit quicker, so it's only 4 years, but you still do have the option to intercalate if you're interested. The way we get all of medicine in 4 years rather than 5 is because we shorten or quicken some of that science theoretical knowledge that you'd normally learn in your first couple of years. We do this because, like I said, most students joining us on graduate medicine are doing so after completing a science subject already, and we expect them to have some grounding in sort of scientific knowledge and also pick up the rest of it really, really quickly. So it's kind of an accelerated option if you decide to take that 4-year course. But otherwise, what you're learning, the qualification you come out with is all exactly the same. So you'll see the courses are called MBBS 5 and MBBS 4. That basically means that they are more or less the same degree. It's just one of them is a little bit quicker, but both of them allow you to start your foundation years in the NHS and become a doctor after that. So just a couple of reasons why someone might decide to study a non-medicine course first and then apply to medicine afterwards. Firstly, it obviously opens up graduate entry as an option. Some people want to do that sort of theoretical stuff in their first degree, then just get on and do a 4-year course and become a doctor after that. For a lot of people, it might be to just up the quality of your medicine application. If your A levels are a little bit lower, or if you just feel like you're weaker, especially in some of the academic areas, then doing another degree, getting a really good grade in that can show that you're really able to handle the academic stuff once you start your medicine degree. It also allows you to develop more scientific knowledge before you start MBBS. So you'll go into knowing your sort of specialty, whichever your undergraduate was in, and be able to hit the ground running with those modules and with that information. For some students, it allows them to find some more options to specialise. If you study something quite specific, or you're able to do something in your first degree that's quite specific, it might mean that you then know when you go into medicine that you want to go into one specific area or another. For some people, it is kind of exploring. If you start a degree kind of planning to do medicine as a second degree, you might find other careers, other options that you find really, really interesting and that you want to pursue instead. And so in some ways, it keeps your options open a little bit more. And lastly, it often gives you a chance to build up a lot of that stuff we look for in personal statements. So experiences that show you'd make a really good doctor, that you'd do well on a medicine degree, whether that's volunteering, work experience, or anything else like that. We're going to hear from our students a little bit later on, and they'll both talk about why they decided to do medicine as a second degree. But for anyone that's considering it, just know it is a really common option increasingly and gives you a lot of extra things that maybe someone going straight into undergraduate medicine wouldn't otherwise get. So one option that you might think of if you want to study a course and then go into medicine afterwards is biomedical sciences, as I've mentioned before. It's almost certainly the most common course that medicine as a second degree student studied previously. And we do offer it at St. George's, and it is quite closely tied to our healthcare and medicine provision. If you study biomedical sciences, you're on site with one of the UK's busiest hospitals with a major trauma centre in the south of London. We also have a lot of specialisation options. So if you decide, actually, I'm really interested in this bit of biomed because I want to go into that for medicine later on, you're able to really specialise and actually change your degree title from just biomedical sciences to, for example, biomedical sciences with neuroscience. You also get lots of professional experience, whether that's through summer placements or a full year out, a professional training year. And again, this can be really great when you're in those medicine interviews, when you're trying to make a strong case to study medicine and explaining why you'll be a really strong candidate. We also have the only, I think, MSc in biomedical sciences in London at the moment, and you have an option to transfer to that if you do want to get even more specialised in biomedical sciences. And lastly, we have loads of career support sort of embedded into our teaching. We're not like a typical biomedical sciences course where everyone goes on to work in the NHS as a biomedical scientist. Instead, we have a really diverse set of careers that students go into afterwards. We'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a second. One thing I did want to show you briefly was just the different modules that we have on offer, just to show you how closely related some of these might be to some of our medicine modules. So of course, you're going to be doing anatomy. That's a lot of what first and second year medics will do anyway. But also in that year 3, where you get to specialise, you can study things like medical ethics, something that often comes up in interviews. You can study infection and immunity. Again, it's kind of thing that you might want to specialise in later on down your medicine career. And just generally looking at this, hopefully you all can see that biomed, although it's not a healthcare subject itself as a science subject, is really linked to medicine. And someone who's studied all of this is going to have a stronger application typically than someone who's just done A levels or has did a different subject entirely. Also to talk about in a little bit more detail is you also have opportunities to study abroad. There's lots of sort of research skills, so you can get loads of detail on what you're sort of interested in research-wise, and you get really, really practical skills that you can use in a variety of careers. So it's not just going into medicine afterwards. In fact, we've had biomedical science students that have gone on to really, really diverse careers. Here's just a few of them. So in this sort of bigger box, you can see lots of them do go on to further study, whether that is medicine. We've also had some dentists come out of our biomed course. We've had some people become physician associates, but also some people pursuing completely different careers, whether those are research and like the pharmaceutical industry for the NHS or similar. Whether it's in teaching, we've also had some students go and make loads of money in law and intellectual property. But again, this is a nice thing. Even if you plan to study biomed to ultimately then get into a medicine course, you'll still have loads of options. You can always change your mind. You can always sort of focus in different areas and just discover different careers that we have to offer. So worth just talking a little bit more about that professional training year as well. So like I said, you have an option to spend a year in industry. Um, This is normally between year 2 and year 3 of the course. You can work in the NHS. So we've had students at Great Ormond Street. We've had students stay in the hospital and work at St. George's. But also you can work for pharmaceutical companies like AstraZeneca and Pfizer and a bunch of different sort of organizations that can allow you to get really specific information that other students applying for medicine or pursuing a career in the biosciences just wouldn't have otherwise. The last thing, and this is a bit of a sell for biomed, we've just brought up in a new bursary for people studying biomedical sciences. So if you did decide you wanted to take biomed as your first degree before then potentially applying to medicine or doing an alternative career or course, you get £1,000 bursary when you join. It's sent direct to you, so it's not like a tuition fee discount. Instead, you get that money into your bank account over sort of over the course of your first year. So £500 at the start, £500 in the middle of the year as well. And that's just because we're growing biomed and we want more and more students to be considering this career and sort of the options that opens to you afterwards. Another course that we have on offer that again, lots of students go on to study medicine afterwards is clinical pharmacology. Now, this is mainly for students that might be not 100% that they definitely want to just do like biosciences or similar. Instead, clinical pharmacology takes drug development and looks at it from lots of different aspects. So there still is a little bit of biosciences. You're getting to work with pharmacologists in the hospital. But also, it's thinking about like the business case for it. It's thinking about how these actually get on shelves. It's thinking about the public health implications of different drugs and their development. Again, this can be a really good option if you're sort of interested in studying this course more generally, but also potentially moving on to medicine afterwards. We often have students that do progress or do apply for medicine afterwards and are successful. And so if you're not 100% on biomed sciences or similar, thinking about this, a little bit more niche course, but still linked to medicine can be a really, really good option. And again, we have lots of support for students in careers if they decide to study clinical pharmacology or similar. Part of the reason that we're talking about biomed and clinical pharmacology in particular is all of you, if you have applied for medicine and been unsuccessful, you'll have been invited to fill in a form asking if you'd like to be considered for biomedical sciences or clinical pharmacology. Essentially, our admissions team will look at your UCAS application, look at your A-levels, and if you're eligible, attempt to make you an offer for these courses, even though you didn't apply for them. So if you filled in that form, you can expect to hear back over the next couple of weeks before the end of January to see if you are eligible for Biomed or Clin Pharm at George's. Otherwise, if you didn't get a chance to fill out that form, you'll still be assessed automatically, but only for biomedical sciences, and you'll hear back by the end of March for this. Once you hear back, this will be updated on your UCAS. So essentially, where you currently have a medicine application for George's, that'll be swapped out to Biomed or Clin Pharm. And then when it gets to the decision time, when you've got to pick which course you want to study next year, you can accept or decline that. If any of you filled in that form and said you didn't want to be considered, but now you've changed your mind, or if you would like to be considered for clinical pharmacology, but didn't get a chance to fill it out, I'll give you in 2 minutes an email that you can send to our admissions team to just let them know you would like to be considered for this course instead. If any of you are interested in any other courses at George's, unfortunately, you can only apply to us now through UCAS Extra or Clearing. If anyone has any questions about that, we can take those at the end. But if it is Biomed or Clin Pharm, I would definitely recommend you get in touch with our admissions team and make them know that you are interested. So we're getting to the end of me talking through sort of the different pathways, but just a couple of final next steps. Firstly, I hope you all go away and consider why you wanted to study medicine. What was it that made you passionate about this course? From that, I think it's really worthwhile for you all to think about alternative careers and degrees. Even if you're 100% on medicine, I want to be a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor, that's great. Understanding these alternative careers will make you a stronger applicant. It will make you ultimately a better doctor if you're able to understand the different healthcare courses and careers available. Then you've got a big decision to make. You can either reapply next year. You could apply for a different course entirely. So you might actually say, I want to be a paramedic instead. Or you can think about completing biomedical sciences or Clin Pharm with us, with the plan to then reapply for medicine after that course is completed. If you do want to complete biomed or Clin Pharm with the idea of applying to medicine down the line, then you really want to spend a bit of time learning more about these courses and how you can get the most out of them when hopefully you join us in September. This is quite a lot of information. Hopefully it was really, really useful for some of you just to hear a little bit about the different options ahead of you. I've put these all up again so you can have a little look. There's also a few extra links on here, namely some information about graduate medicine, some things about our biomedical sciences course and the bursary. Again, these will all be sent around afterwards, so you'll be able to find these links and a bit more information there. And before we sort of get into the Q&A and hear from our ambassadors, I wanted to put on screen these emails and phone numbers. So at the top, that's our admissions email and phone number. This is the number that you get in touch with if you have already applied and would like an update on your application. So for example, if you've applied for medicine, maybe you've been rejected, but you'd like to be considered for biomed, but you didn't get a chance to fill in the form, or you change your mind on what you wanted on the form, send an email to admissions here or give them a ring during the weekdays, and they will be able to get back to you and confirm if that's okay. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about some of the courses that we have on offer, we also have a course inquiries email and line. You can phone this number again from 10 to 2 during the week and also from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. to learn a little bit more about the courses, or you can send us an email and we'll send you some resources for all the courses that we have on offer. Okay, I think I've spoken enough, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask the ambassadors to join us again. Oh, Kerry, do you have your hand raised?
Sorry to interrupt. So just whilst we hear from ambassadors, I don't think the Q&A is working, but I have opened the chat. So if you have questions and you haven't been able to submit them in the Q&A, if you navigate to the chat, you should be able to post there.
Oh, thanks, Kerry. So do we want to start with Zara? Do you want to talk a little bit in more detail about how you got to where you are and whether you've got sort of any advice for attendees today?
Yeah, so I initially did a degree in human biology, not at George's, at Coventry University. Since school, I wanted to study medicine, but I knew that my UCAT wasn't strong enough when I wanted to apply. So I ended up not even applying in sixth form to medicine because I knew my UCAT wouldn't be strong enough to apply. So I decided to in fact, I actually applied. I think I was given an offer for biomed from George's, but unfortunately, I missed the grade. So I ended up applying through clearing to do human biology at Coventry. And then in my final year at Coventry, I applied to do medicine. And in fact, I had one interview during the normal cycle for medicine. And then I was waitlisted at that university. And then I found that George's had medicine interviews through clearing. So I submitted my application to George's at that point, had an interview and made it to medicine. And now I'm in my final year, hopefully graduating in July. I would say, similar to as Jack has mentioned, I would say that my degree has helped me in some respects in terms of like knowing how to study at university level. Knowing like where to put the time in, how to revise, when to seek help. I think I had that like footing earlier in terms of like being an independent learner. And at university, it's definitely your learning is your own responsibility. There are people here to help you, but you need to seek that help out yourself. So I think I knew that quite early on. And like medicine is it's great and it's fulfilling, but it's very difficult. Like you've got to learn to balance a lot of things. So I think moving away from home and doing that for 3 years beforehand meant I was able to, I think, better take on those challenges during my medicine degree so far. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else to add, but that's a bit about how I got to medicine today.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Tanya?
Yeah, so similar to Zara, I also did a degree before I did medicine. So I actually applied during in year 13. I got an offer for medicine from George's actually at the time, but I missed my grades. So I wasn't offered an alternative, which was biomed, and I took it 'cause I didn't have any other options at the time. Um, and at the time, I think there was a transfer, which you can apply for at the end of your second year at Georgia. You could transfer into medicine in your second year of biomed. I got the interview, I got rejected again, and decided in my third year that I was going to apply for the graduate course. And so I um did the GAMSAT, which is a very hefty sort of exam, as well as the UCAT. My UCAT was terrible, as it was always has been, and so the GAMSAT was the only shot I had, and applied for a bunch of courses, got interviews, and got the George's offer at that time. So now, since then, so I went from biomed straight into the 4-year course at George's, and then I'm now in my final year, just like Zara, and we'll hopefully both be graduating very soon. So it has been a long sort of slog, but I think I agree that it was very beneficial to have done a degree beforehand because the idea that if I'd done undergrad and be a doctor already would be kind of horrifying. And I think that having that degree helped me figure out like how to sort of study and how to study on your own as well. And it's all sorts of stuff that no one tells you about medicine, where like in your clinical years, especially at George's, you have placement all the time. So you end up living in like across the different country every 5 weeks or somewhere new. And that's an adjustment as well. You've got to study at the same time. You've got to revise for your practical exams and your written exams, and it's a whole experience. Um, and the 4-year course it's very quick, especially in your first year. So I'm kind of glad it went the way it did, even though at the time it felt like awful. But yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
Great, thank you. What made you, I guess, the UCAT and GAMSAT kind of decided for you grad medicine over undergraduate, but did you want to do grad medicine anyway, like do that 4-year, or would you have been happy to do the 5-year?
I think grad med was a necessity just because of finance. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. I also want to like say that people tend to be turned off by doing the grad medicine route because they say it's very competitive and it's super hard. And I'll be honest, I never thought of myself as an academic weapon. Um, and I scraped through, but it doesn't really, I think it's worth having a go if you feel like you should, if that's what you want to do. So yeah, it was more like because undergrad as a second degree is very much a big financial burden. It's very difficult to do. And I have respect for everyone who does it because I don't think I would have been able to. But graduate's got its own challenges with how quick it is. So it's a toss up between what you think will work for you, really. And I think GAMSAT scares people as well because it seems like a really nasty exam, but it's just another exam, and yeah, anyone can do it.
What about you, Zara? Why did you decide to undergrad medicine as a second degree?
I decided undergrad. It's interesting because the things that Danny were mentioning were the reasons why I didn't end up even attempting the GAMSAT or applying to grad med. So when I applied, it was all undergraduate courses, because I just thought I had a better chance of getting into undergraduate compared to graduate medicine. But as Dania says, it is a massive financial burden. So if it's something you're thinking about, you definitely have to sit down with yourself and those around you to see whether it's something you have to fund because apart from this year, the past 4 years I've had to pay directly out of pocket. There is no loan, um, tuition fee loan. You can get a maintenance, but you can't get any tuition fee loan. So that does mean unless you have savings or your parents are willing to help pay for you, it will be challenging if you don't have that in place. So it's definitely something to think about.
Bro, thank you. I don't think we've had that many questions come through, so I guess unless any come through in the next couple of minutes, we can maybe just finish with. Oh, one just came through. I'd like to know if I start a biomedical science course in September 2025, am I able to apply to undergraduate medicine during the first year and will I be considered by universities? So generally, you will need to complete the course. We don't have a direct transfer or anything like that. So it'll be after you've completed your entire 3-year degree that you'd then apply for either graduate or undergraduate medicine. Some students do end up applying whilst they're studying. It can be a little bit difficult. Obviously, you're studying and then you're also trying to apply for different courses, but as an option if you sort of have decided that you want to do that. But generally, if you want to apply for grad medicine or as a second degree, then you have to complete the full biomed course. Kerry?
Sorry, just to add to that, I'm sorry I can't turn my camera on, but what I will say is that currently at George's, we do accept applications from people who are in their first year of a bachelor's degree, who are trying to apply again for medicine, but it's on the basis of the qualifications you already hold, not your progress on your first year. And I can't guarantee that that policy won't change either in the future. But currently that is something we do consider. But as Jack said, like it's not a guarantee at other medical schools, and it's not a guarantee that we'll retain that in the future either.
Yeah, I can see a few people typing, so I'll give it a sec. I don't know if Sarah or Dania, you have any like final tips for someone that maybe is in a similar situation to you, that they were hoping to do medicine at the end of year 13, although I guess people can be at other stages, just sort of if there's sort of more general advice you'd have for people at this stage when they're thinking about their next steps. Zara, do you want to go first? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Okay, in terms of general tips, I would just say, like no matter what you do, you might even decide right now that in fact, like I don't want to do medicine at all. I'll do something else. Medicine's always here. So if you decide later on, years down the line, that you want to do medicine, then absolutely, there are people on our course who are in their 30s and 40s. So it's not like medicine, if you don't do it now, you can never do it. And I would definitely say reach out to um, students who are on the course already or people that you know who've applied and been successful to ask them like what they did to improve. When I was in my final year of my human biology course, there are like some great resources. So I was able to meet with a careers advisor and sit down, do a mock interview, go through questions. And I know that my previous sixth form also had that option. So definitely look into those. Speak to your teachers or your careers advisors at school if you have one, and see if they can help you in that regard. But definitely, as you've seen from my journey, I've gone through clearing twice and ended up at university. So don't think that just because your grades aren't good enough or you've gone through clearing that it doesn't mean you can't end up as a doctor at the end of the day. So keep going.
Oh, perfect. Kind of a hard act to follow, but Dania, do you have anything?
Yeah, there's anything else to say really. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to do it, then don't give up because I mean, both of us have had like long journeys to get here. I got rejected twice. It was like it's not fun, but if you really want to do it, keep going, you'll probably get there. And if you want to like go do something else entirely, then yeah, obviously do that because medicine's not the only thing in the world. Um, and maybe if you do work experience and stuff like that during some time out of like school or uni, like doing work experience might help you figure out if it is for you in the first place, because sometimes being on the wards as a HCA or something will make you think, oh, this isn't actually for me. And that's always a good thing to do, just for experience anyways. But yeah, it's honestly like I feel like anybody can get into medicine. It's not really about like grades at the end of the day, it's perseverance because even doing medicine is an exercise in perseverance. So if you kind of push through it, you'll get there.
Nice, thank you. I think we just have one more question that I can take. Just people asking about how they can find out a little bit more about some of the subjects if they've received an offer. So the best like resource to use first and foremost is a website. We have really detailed course pages, especially for biomedical sciences and clinical pharmacology that you can look at there. Beyond that, and we'll send this through in the email that goes in the follow-up. We have some webinars for all of our different courses. They're called exploring webinars and they go into details about the courses, often run by academics. that actually teach on the courses. And similarly, we have some taster lectures so you can see what the teaching and learning is actually like. And lastly, and again, we'll send this all through afterwards, we have a thing on our website called UniBuddy. And basically, we have students who volunteer to speak to prospective applicants. So you can go on the website and speak to a current student studying the subject that you're interested in. So you can find out a little bit more detail that way from sort of directly a student that's studying the course. Somebody asked what career options are there after biomedical science if medicine doesn't end up being an option. Again, I'd really recommend having a little look on the website and in the Exploring webinar, because we have some careers people in biomed that love to talk about the massive variety of careers that you can have. And some things that people do go into is often around sort of like research, and sometimes in like industry with like pharmaceuticals, sometimes in universities or in teaching. Do you have anything else, Danielle, on that? Did you get a lot of like careers guidance whilst you were doing biomed? I know it was a while ago now.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of stuff from, I think you mentioned the professional training year, which was one option that a lot of people did. Some people worked like GC, like GlaxoSmithKline and stuff like that, and got jobs from that. And we had like careers fairs, I think, during that time as well. And Andrula Elia was the best person, I think, to consult about careers. She was really good. So that's a name drop to mention.
Yeah,
But they're
she's still
quite
good.
on it with their different career pathways, I think, in biomed, especially in third year.
Yeah. It's actually, I would say, a lot more diverse than people think because there is such a big industry, especially in the UK now, and sort of pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. Kerry, I don't know if you had anything to add there. I could see you typing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that both of our science programs really emphasize careers and employability, particularly biomedical sciences, as Daniel mentioned about Andrula, who is our careers lead for biomedical sciences. And every year there's always at least one careers fair for all students where we invite alumni to come back in, as well as other linked careers industries. And it is really diverse. You've got naturally kind of the research and industry, but we also have kind of colleagues come in from, like as Jack mentioned, Teach First, the police London Met Police Service, as well as kind of other industries you wouldn't necessarily associate with the sciences. And the emphasis on that is because there's so many transferable skills that are developed through undergraduate study generally, and you're kind of taught not just the kind of facts of biomedical sciences, but to be critical thinkers and good communicators and that kind of thing. So just as with there's kind of general kind of careers employability stuff for a variety of degrees, you can get that with a biomedical sciences degree as well as the more specialized routes that you would associate with that subject.
Oh, thank you. You just had a question there about transfer. So we don't currently have a transfer program from biomedical science, but like I said, a lot of students do apply after they've completed their degree, so after their third year, and they can apply then to MBBS 4 or MBBS 5, depending on what they're sort of interested in. But there's no sort of direct clinical transfer at the moment. Okay, everyone, I think that was the last question, so we can probably finish up there and we can all go have our Friday nights. But thank you so much for joining. Like I said, we'll send around the recording afterwards, as well as some extra resources so you can look. And then do get in touch with us on the course inquiries or admissions line if you do want to learn more about specific courses or just talk about your application in a little bit more detail. But otherwise, I think we can sort of end it there. Thank you to both the ambassadors as well for joining. Hope you have a good evening.